Hours before the encounter, in the dark of the night, an even darker shadow roamed through the dense trees. This shadow belonged to none other than Kyo, a female wolf. She had been roaming for days, no goal in mind. Now she remained in a dark place. Anger and betrayal coursed through her veins as thoughts of the past continued to haunt her. The female darted speedily through the dense trees with ease, her paws burning with every step taken. It almost seemed like she was running away from something. But truth be told, nothing was chasing her. No, she ran on her own term of rage. This was her way to vent, to let go of all the pain temporarily, and to just be able to feel the burn on her paws and the adrenaline that courses through her body. Kyo had been running for a while now, since the sunset till now, the middle of the night. Her paws were raw from hitting the ground, numb from the repeated contact. Kyo knew her paws would hurt later, but she didn't care. Pain was something she was used to. As she ran, she could feel her adrenaline pass, replaced with sheer exhaustion. She had pushed herself past her limit. Her legs quivered under her weight, eventually giving out under her. Kyo tumbled forward viciously, unable to halt herself. Sharp rocks and thorny twigs did not let her pass by unharmed, and a tree just so happened to be in her path. Abruptly her tumble was halted, and the female's head hit the tree with such force that she was knocked unconscious. There her body lay, angled upward against the tree. Her paws drifted over the large roots. A sharp memory pierced through the dark, clear and vivid, as if it were yesterday. She was a pup again, her fur still soft and downy. The older wolves spoke of a goldfish, a mythical creature whose scales shimmered like the sun. They said that whoever caught the goldfish would earn the pack's respect and be considered a true hunter. Kyo, eager to prove herself, had spent countless hours trying to catch one. She'd even braved the deepest parts of the river, ignoring her fear of water, all for the promise of belonging. But the goldfish remained elusive, and her efforts were met with teasing and ridicule. Each failed attempt chipped away at her spirit, leaving her feeling more isolated and unwanted than before. That day, the day of the storm, was supposed to be different. Kyo had decided she would catch the goldfish, no matter what. Ignoring the dark clouds gathering on the horizon, and her mother's absent gaze, she'd slipped away from the den. The river, usually a rushing torrent, was strangely still, its surface like a sheet of dark glass. It seemed almost inviting. Her small heart thumped with a mix of fear and excitement as she waded in. The water was cold, shockingly so, and the current tugged at her small paws. Kyo shivered, but pressed on, her eyes scanning the depths for a flash of gold. She remembered her brother's taunts, their cruel laughter, and it fueled her determination. She had to prove them wrong. She had to prove she was worthy. But the river had other plans. The stillness was a trick, a deceptive calm before the storm. The wind picked up, howling like a banshee, and the clouds unleashed their fury. Rain lashed down, turning the river into a churning, frothing beast. The current became a raging torrent, and Kyo, small and inexperienced, was no match for its power. She remembered the fear, the icy grip of panic as the river swept her away. She thrashed and struggled, But it was no use. The water filled her lungs, and the world turned dark. The glint of the goldfish was replaced by the cold, black depths of the river. She gasped, using whatever energy she had to call out for help. But nobody came. Nobody seemed to care. Eventually her strength drained, and she could no longer fight the strong currents. Her heavy eyelids shut, her body giving up. The passed-out pup was then carried away by the water. Her last thought, before the darkness claimed her, was a bitter realization. It had all been a lie. There was no goldfish. There was only the cold, unforgiving river and the crushing weight of her failure. It was the bright light fluttering through the cracks of the trees that woke her up. The warmth of it seemed too peaceful compared to the haunting memories she just had. Everything was bright and painful, not excluding the big splitting headache she got from last night's crash. Her whole body ached excruciatingly. Her paws throbbed, but were numb. The sun rays illuminated her pitch-black pelt. It was clear to her now that it was daytime. Kyo's eyes slowly adjusted to the light, and she began taking in her surroundings without moving an inch. She was in a moderately dense forest with vibrant colors. Everything around her seemed alive with constant motion. The wind blew the leaves of the tall oaks. Birds sang loudly and insects chirped. It was serene. A sort of calm had washed through her. She sighed and closed her eyes, taking a moment to herself before moving. As she moved, Q groaned loudly as her aching bones protested in pain. The first attempt to get up was a failure. Her exhausted legs trembled under her 50-pound weight, and Q collapsed with a oomph. A whine of frustration escaped from her mouth, and she growled angrily. Trying again, this time, fueled by anger, she pushed herself up, forcing her legs to hold under her weight. Once she felt she was sturdy enough, she began to slowly walk forward. Her stomach began growling slowly, reminding Q how little she had eaten the last few weeks. It was a wonder she was still alive, after all she had been through. A lot. Kyo lived as what one would call a rogue, although she didn't care. In fact, she believed the title fit her quite well. Kyo lived by stealing prey from territories, which usually ended up in a chase or fight with a patrol. Kyo, with her unnatural speed, could easily outrun her enemies. However, if she had gotten caught, that's where she would have been screwed. But lately, there seemed no need to have to run from packs. She had noticed that many wolves were beginning to disappear. It had been a wonder to her, but she honestly didn't care. After all, she hated other canines. But even more so, she hated packs. She despised them. But she had also, not only were canines disappearing, so were the prey she had so desperately been looking for. The reason her stomach was practically eating itself. Eventually, Kyo figured if she just ran somewhere, anywhere, then maybe she'd at least catch a whiff of something. Now, she would put her theory in action. She raised her head high, sniffing the air for a scent of prey. For a minute, she could smell nothing but the crisp, cool wind. But then, with the change of wind, a familiar scent drifted right in her path. Deer. Q's stomach growled, even louder this time. She could feel the anxiety build up in her body and an eagerness to get her claws on some tender meat. Without a thought, Q began running again, ignoring her quivering legs and pushing herself. The dense trees, without warning, opened in a large clearing. Skidding to a halt, she panted and crouched close to the ground, her belly touching the dew-wet grass. She could see the deer from here. It wasn't only one, though. A whole herd was there to eat. Q impatiently thought of a plan for herself. An empty stomach makes it hard to think clearly. Eventually, Q figured that if she ran in, began attacking randomly, she would eventually catch one, right? Feeling confident in her plan, she licked her maw impatiently and dashed out into the clearing, following through with her plan. As she neared the deer, she realized the mistake she had made. These deer were much larger than her. From afar, they seemed at least a bit smaller. Still, though, she kept her ground and began lashing out with her wickedly sharp claws. She could feel warm blood seeping through her claws on contact. Her mouth watered as she imagined herself biting down onto their juicy legs, ripping them apart. Her hunger had distracted her temporarily, allowing a buck to kick her off. Q flew into the ground, dazed, and by the time she had gotten up, the whole herd had disappeared. Q blinked the dirt out of her eyes. The pain in her side was severe, and her hunger could match. She whines, upset. She wasn't able to even take down one deer. Her ears flattened as she stared at the ground. A flutter of negative emotions filled her, and she fought herself mentally. So upset was she that she had not realized a new presence was approaching her. "You seem awfully distracted," a deep, scruffy voice had boomed behind her. Q tensed and immediately turned around to face the approacher. Her teeth bared viciously, and she snapped her jaws at the male. He took a few steps back to avoid contact with the sharp canines. Q studied the male wolf, all her senses on high alert. He seemed healthy, strong, and he also looked like he could easily win in a fight. Q did not care, though, because right now she was willing to die. The male was a light hazel brown, his fur a medium short fuzz. His tail was thin and less fuzzy. Patches of fur were missing, a sure sign of stress. On his face, over his right eye, a white ring pattern existed. The wolf seemed middle-aged, old enough to be Q's father if need be. Q growled at him, warning him to stay away. "Keep away, or I'll rip your face to shreds," she threatened. The male looked at her, obviously sizing her up. He huffed and just sat down where he was. "Where is your pack, little one?" he asked, his voice now tender and soft, as if speaking to a pup. This angered Cow. She was not a pup. She was at least 2 years old. Her ears flattened, and once again she flashed her sharp canines. "Little pup? Okay, old mutt. I might be small, but I am damn well no pup." The male sat there staring at her, and then let out a laugh. "I am sorry, miss. You are just unusually small, and your hunting skills seem to be severely out of date." Cow glared at him, her eyes staring daggers into his very own. Was he mocking her? She opened her mouth to retort, but before she could speak, the male spoke again. "You don't have a pack, do you?" he asked her again, emphasizing the importance of the word pack. Weeping. Done. For the moment. Forever. Kyo laughed with sarcasm. "Ha! A pack? I'm a rogue, and I will tear you up. I haven't seen any packs in months." The male took a few steps forward so casually, his snout up in the air sniffing, getting a whiff of Kyo's scent. Kyo jumped and stepped back, growling loudly. "I said back up! Go away! I'm not scared to fight you!" The male sighed and backed up again, a frown appearing in his eyes. Obviously, he was getting nowhere with this. "Perhaps it would help if I offered my name. I am Orion. I am the alpha of the Blue Moon Pack in the Northwestern Ridge. I'm looking for my pack. Most importantly, my pup and mate. They had disappeared without a track." Orion began explaining himself, in hopes it would get the female to open up, but Kyo rudely cut him off. "I don't care who you are or what you are looking for. It's none of my business," she stated. Of course he was an alpha, after all. He had the aura of one. Hatred filled Kyo, and she dug her claws into the ground. Her stomach growled loudly once again, but Kyo ignored it. Orion, however, did not let this pass by unnoticed. "You seem very hungry. When have you last eaten?" he asked her, the tenderness back in his voice. Kyo ignored him, her muscles stiff from being tense and in a defensive position. She could feel the sheer exhaustion again. Anger is replaced with an ill feeling. She knew she was eventually going to fall out, but her pride would not let her do it in front of this mutt. "I had enough." She gave Orion one more glare and growl and then took off, using her last bit of energy to run from him. She could hear him chase her, but already she knew he would not be able to catch up. Easily she lost him, and when she did, only then did she stop and let herself fall down onto the leafy ground.